Tyler T-Bone Matthews stood in front of floor-to-ceiling windows in his Boulder mansion, watching the Rocky Mountains catch the morning light like they were performing just for him. His Super Bowl ring sat on the marble counter next to a protein shake he wouldn't finish and a stack of endorsement contracts he hadn't bothered to read. The Denver Broncos linebacker had everything America told him mattered. The $18 million contract, the ESPN highlights, the Instagram followers who track his every move. But lately, the champagne tasted flat and the cheers fell hollow. His publicist Marcy had called 3 times already this morning, her voice tight with a controlled panic that meant his DUI arrest was still trending. Tyler grabbed his keys, ignoring the missed calls, already late for the damage control meeting that would determine whether Nike dropped him before the season even started. The conference room at Broncos headquarters smelled like expensive cologne and desperation. Marcy had assembled what she called his redemption team, a crisis PR firm that charged $50,000 just to show up, a social media consultant who looked 12, and Marcus Chun, Tyler's agent of 6 years who kept checking his Patek Philippe watch like he had somewhere better to be. They prepared a PowerPoint presentation titled, From Linebacker to Leader, the Tyler Matthews comeback story, complete with pie charts showing how charity work could boost his Q rating by 15 points within 3 months. Tyler slouched in his chair, half listening as they pitched ideas. Coaching inner city kids, building houses with Habitat for Humanity, sponsoring a youth football camp, all of it feeling packaged and fake. Then Marcy mentioned veterans, and the room went quiet because everyone knew veterans were PR gold in America, especially for a football player trying to look patriotic after driving drunk through downtown Denver at 2 a.m. Marcus leaned forward, his silk tie catching the light as he pulled up a photo on his phone of a woman in a tattered military jacket, standing outside the stadium. She looked like she'd been sleeping rough. Hollow cheeks, guarded eyes, cargo pants that had seen better days. But there was something in the way she stood that suggested she'd once commanded attention in very different circumstances. "This is Alex Rivera," Marcus said, sliding the phone across the table. "Homeless veteran. Hangs around the stadium looking for work. Perfect optics for what we need." Marcy was already nodding, her manicured fingers flying across her iPad as she calculated the social media impact of NFL star hires homeless vet. Tyler stared at the photo, seeing not a person but a prop, a human billboard that could rehabilitate his image faster than any youth camp or charity dinner. He grabbed the phone, zoomed in on Alex's face, and made a decision that would change everything. Set it up. Hello, my friends. Before we continue our story, leave your like, share the story, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you. Tyler's Boulder estate sprawled across 5 acres of prime Colorado real estate, purchased during his rookie season when the signing bonus felt infinite and taste felt optional. The main house featured a home theater bigger than most apartments, a gym equipped with $200,000 worth of training equipment, and a garage that housed a collection of cars he barely drove. The Lamborghini for Instagram, the Range Rover for every day, the vintage Mustang he'd bought because Tom Brady had one. His bedroom closet could have housed a family, filled with designer suits he wore once and sneakers that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Standing in his kitchen that morning, Tyler realized he couldn't remember the last time he'd actually cooked anything on a Viking stove that had cost $25,000 installed, the appliance existing purely because luxury homes were supposed to have them. His phone buzzed constantly with messages from women whose names he'd forgotten and teammates ribbing him about the DUI mugshot that had become a meme. Tyler scrolled through Instagram, watching his follower count fluctuate like a stock ticker, each lost follower feeling like a personal rejection, even though he'd never met any of these people. The comment section on his last post had devolved into arguments between defenders calling him just human and critics posting skull emojis and DUI statistics. His mother had called twice. He'd ignored both, because he couldn't handle the disappointment in her voice when she asked how the same boy who'd memorized Bible verses to win her approval had become the man throwing bottles at paparazzi. The emptiness of the house pressing on him, all those square feet echoing with the sound of his own breathing, and the hum of appliances cooling food he'd never eat. His nephew Jordan was supposed to visit this weekend, his sister dropping the 8-year-old off for Uncle Time. That really meant please be a good influence for once. Tyler had promised to take him to Broncos practice, Let him meet the team. Maybe teach him to throw a proper spiral in the backyard, where the grass was maintained by a service that came twice a week. He'd blown off Jordan 3 times already this summer. Each cancellation met with his sister's increasingly icy silence and Jordan's attempts to sound like it didn't matter. The kid worshipped Tyler with the uncomplicated devotion of childhood, collecting his trading cards and wearing a custom jersey with Uncle T-Bone on the back to school every Friday. Tyler looked at the photo on his fridge, Jordan in his jersey, gap-toothed smile, throwing up a peace sign, and felt something twist in his chest that might have been shame if he'd let himself examine it too closely. The drive to the stadium took 20 minutes through Boulder traffic, past breweries and yoga studios and coffee shops where people paid $8 for lattes while discussing chakras and carbon footprints. Tyler's Range Rover attracted stares at every stoplight. Fans wanting photos. Critics wanted to tell him he was a disgrace. Children pointing excitedly while their parents pulled out phones to capture the local celebrity in his natural habitat. He parked in his reserved spot, the one with his name painted in Broncos orange, feeling the weight of the stadium towering above him like a monument to everything he'd achieved and everything he was about to lose. The security guard waved him through without checking ID, because everyone knew T-Bone Matthews, the linebacker who'd made the game-winning tackle in the Super Bowl 3 years ago when the world still loved him unconditionally. Marcus was already in the parking lot when Tyler arrived, standing next to a woman who looked like a strong wind might knock her over. She wore the same military jacket from the photo, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail that had probably once been regulation perfect, but now just looked tired. Her posture was military straight despite obvious exhaustion, and when Tyler approached, she met his eyes with a directness that made him uncomfortable because most people either fawned or glared. No one just looked. "Tyler Matthews, meet Alex Rivera," Marcus said with the enthusiasm of a game show host, gesturing between them like he was introducing royalty at charity gala. Tyler extended his hand out of reflex, felt calluses that suggested hard labor, and immediately pulled back to wipe his palm on his jeans like he'd touched something dirty. "Marcy's drafted a press release," Marcus continued, scrolling through his phone while Alex stood there being discussed like a piece of furniture. "We're positioning this as linebacker gives back. Tyler Matthews hires homeless veteran for stadium security." Tyler circled Alex slowly, taking the worn combat boots, the cargo pants with faded knees, the jacket with name tape that read Rivera in block letters that had seen sun and rain, and God knew what else. "You'll patrol the parking lot during games. Stand around looking, well, like you've served," Tyler said, his tone making it clear he thought military service was something that happened to other people without options. Alex's jaw tightened imperceptibly, but she said nothing, and Tyler appreciated that. He didn't need attitude from someone he was doing a favor by employing. "I'm going to be real with you," Tyler said, crossing his arms over his chest in a stance that had intimidated offensive linemen and reporters alike. "This is about my image, not your service or your story or whatever sob tale got you sleeping in parking lots." He pulled out his wallet, extracted a stadium security badge that Marcy had prepared, and held it out like he was handing a child a participation trophy. "You show up when I tell you, stand where I tell you, and when the media asks, you say I'm a hero for giving you a chance." Alex took the badge without comment, her fingers steady despite the obvious hunger and exhaustion that shadowed her eyes. Tyler felt a flicker of something, guilt, maybe, or recognition that he was being an asshole, but crushed it down because assholes got results and nice guys got cut from the roster. Marcus handed Alex a schedule printed on official Broncos letterhead, outlining her duties that basically amounted to standing around looking photogenic for Tyler's Instagram redemption arc. "You'll start tomorrow night. We're hosting a charity gala at Tyler's place. Perfect opportunity to show him mentoring a veteran." Tyler was already walking away, calling over his shoulder about how she should clean up for the event, maybe borrow something that didn't smell like she'd been sleeping in it. Alex watched him go, her expression unreadable in the harsh Colorado sunlight that made the stadium parking lot shimmer like a mirage. Marcus pressed an envelope into her hand. "Advance on your first paycheck," before hurrying after Tyler, leaving Alex alone with $200 cash in a job that required swallowing her pride like it was combat rations she'd eaten plenty of times before. Alex Rivera's car was a 2006 Honda Civic with a cracked windshield, a broken passenger window covered with duct tape and plastic, an odometer that had rolled over twice. The back seat held everything she owned: a duffel bag with 3 changes of clothes, a sleeping bag rated for Colorado winters, a toiletries kit from VA, and a waterproof box containing her military records that she protected like they were more valuable than gold. She'd been sleeping in the Civic for 8 months, rotating between parking lots that didn't chase away overnight campers, Walmart, 24-hour fitness centers, and recently, the employee lot behind the Denver Broncos Stadium, where security was lax and the lights stayed on all night. The VA had offered her transitional housing, but the crowded rooms and mandatory group therapy sessions triggered her PTSD so badly she'd walked out after 3 days, choosing the car's isolation over trauma being surrounded by people. Her hands shook when she tried to drink the coffee she'd bought with Marcus's cash advance at a gas station that was more liquor store than anything else. The VA psychiatrist called them tremors, a physical manifestation of hypervigilance and sleep deprivation that would probably never fully disappear. 8 months ago, Captain Alexandria Rivera had commanded a platoon in Syria, led rescue missions that saved 17 American hostages, and earned a Silver Star for valor that now sat in her waterproof box next to discharge papers marked honorable and a folded flag from a funeral she could barely remember. Now she was taking handouts from a football player who'd made it clear she was a prop in his personal rehabilitation theater. And the worst part was she needed the money too badly to tell him to go to hell. The charity gala schedule Marcus had given her listed duties that made her want to laugh if laughing didn't hurt. Arrive at 6 p.m., were provided security uniform. Stand near entrance as visible example of Tyler's philanthropy. She was supposed to be a decoration, a human monument to military service that Tyler could point to when donors asked about his commitment to veterans. Alex had worked security details before, protecting diplomats in Baghdad, guarding supply convoys through hostile territory. But those jobs required alertness and skill, not standing around looking grateful while rich people congratulated themselves for writing checks. She crumpled the schedule, then smoothed it out again because she couldn't afford pride when her bank account had $47 and the VA hospital was the only place she felt remotely safe. The VA psychiatrist, Dr. Sarah Chun, had asked her during their last session why she was punishing herself. "You're parking outside the stadium of a man who sees you as a photo op," Dr. Chun had said, her voice gentle but firm in that therapist way. "Why not take the transitional housing, get stable, work on your trauma in a safe environment?" Alex had stared at the motivational poster on the wall. A kitten hanging from a tree branch would hang in there in Comic Sans, and try to explain that stability felt like a cage, that being homeless meant she controlled her environment even if that environment was a car backseat. What she didn't say was that she'd been the person people depended on for 6 years, the captain who made life or death decisions, and accepting how it felt like admitting she become someone who needed saving. The sun was setting over the Rockies when Alex drove to Tyler's Boulder address, following GPS directions to a neighborhood where houses had gates and landscaping that required full-time staff. She parked at the end of his circular driveway, behind a catering truck unloading champagne and lobster for people who'd never worried about where their next meal came from. A woman in her 30s marched out. Marcy, the publicist in the photo Tyler had shown her, holding a garment bag and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You must be Alex," Marcy said with the forced enthusiasm of someone checking items off a list. "Let's get you presentable." The word presentable hung in the air like an insult, and Alex followed Marcy inside, past marble columns and crystal chandeliers, into a mansion that could have housed 50 homeless veterans comfortably. The security uniform Marcy provided was generic mall cop, navy blue polo with Matthews Foundation security, embroidered in gold, khaki pants that were 2 sizes too big, and a badge that said staff instead of anything acknowledging actual security clearance. Alex changed in a bathroom bigger than most studio apartments, staring at herself in a mirror framed in gold leaf that probably cost more than she'd made in a year as a captain. She looked tired, hollowed out, like someone playing dress-up in a life that didn't fit anymore. Marcy knocked impatiently, rushing her out to stand by the front entrance where arriving guests could see the veteran Tyler had so generously employed. The first guests arrived in Teslas and Mercedes, dressed in cocktail attire that cost more than Alex's car, air-kissing each other while discussing their recent trips to Aspen and Napa Valley. Tyler stood at the entrance in a custom suit, shaking hands and accepting compliments about his generosity with practiced humility that didn't match the arrogance she'd seen in the parking lot. When a reporter from the Denver Post asked about Alex, Tyler pulled her forward with a hand on her shoulder that felt proprietary and performative. "This is Alex, Army veteran, and I believe in taking care of those who served," he said into a microphone, while cameras flashed and Alex stood there feeling like an exhibit at a zoo where people paid to see the unfortunate. Sienna Grant arrived fashionably late in a dress that sparkled like she'd been dipped in diamonds, her blonde hair styled in waves that defied physics and humidity. She was Tyler's most recent ex. Marcus had mentioned her during the parking lot briefing. An Instagram influencer with 800,000 followers who documented her life in filter perfection for an audience that envied everything she touched. Sienna's eyes skated over Alex with particular contempt beautiful women, reserved for those they consider beneath notice, before she draped herself over Tyler like expensive jewelry. "Babe, this is so touching," Sienna cooed loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "You're like giving back and stuff." Her tone suggested charity work was a hobby like Pilates or brunch, something rich people did between shopping trips to feel morally superior. Inside the mansion, the gala had transformed Tyler's home into something from a movie about how rich people imagined generosity worked. Ice sculptures shaped like football helmets melted slowly near shrimp towers that could have fed a shelter for a week, while a jazz quartet played in the corner, and waiters circulated with champagne that cost $300 per bottle. Alex stood near the entrance per Marcy's instructions, watching wealthy donors write checks to the Matthews Foundation, an organization that apparently existed as of this morning, created specifically to make Tyler look charitable. She counted at least 50 guests, all of them comfortable in this world of casual wealth and performative kindness, none of them noticing the veteran they'd come to celebrate standing alone by the door like hired help. Tyler worked the room with athletic grace, moving from group to group with that smile Alex recognized from commercials and sports highlights. He perfected the art of making everyone feel like they were his priority. A hand on the shoulder here, a knowing laugh there, the kind of charisma that made people want to be near him despite the DUI still trending on social media. When donors asked about his commitment to veterans, he gestured toward Alex like she was evidence instead of a person, saying things like, "It's about giving back, and those who serve deserve our support," without ever having asked Alex what she needed or wanted. She watched him perform generosity like it was a route he'd memorized, hitting his marks perfectly while his eyes stayed empty of actual compassion. A group of Instagram models had clustered around Sienna, their collective beauty so aggressive it felt like a weapon. They kept glancing at Alex and whispering, then laughing in that cruel way that suggested they'd identified someone to mock. One of them, a redhead in a dress that barely qualified as fabric, approached Alex with her phone out. "Oh my God, did you, actually serve?" she asked, her voice pitched high with performative interest. "That jacket is so authentic. Where did you get it?" Before Alex could answer, the model had snapped a selfie with Alex in the background, already typing a caption about real heroes for followers who wouldn't see the mockery underneath the admiration. Alex's jaw tightened, her training kicking in. Assess threats, control responses, don't engage, while the model wandered back to Sienna's group giggling about stolen valor aesthetic. Marcus appeared at her elbow, his cologne expensive enough to smell like money itself. He handed her a water bottle and a knowing look that suggested he saw the humiliation happening, but considered it part of the job. "Tyler wants you to circulate. Talk to guests about your service," Marcus said, checking his phone while he spoke, multitasking her existence into his busy schedule. "Keep it uplifting. Rescue missions, helping people, that kind of thing. Don't mention the PTSD or homelessness unless someone asks directly." Alex took the water, her fingers steady despite wanting to pour it over Marcus's head, and wondered how many more indignities she'd accept before her pride outweighed her practical need for a paycheck. She moved into the crowd, a ghost haunting a party thrown in her own unwanted honor. An older couple cornered her near the champagne fountain, their concern radiating the kind of pity that made Alex want to disappear. "What branch did you serve in, dear?" the woman asked, her diamond bracelet catching the light like a small star. Alex gave the abbreviated version. Army, 6 years. Deployed twice, while they nodded with the solemn appreciation people showed when discussing things they'd never experienced. "And Tyler just hired you?" The man asked, impressed by the quarterback's generosity in a way that suggested he thought veterans needed saving rather than jobs that matched their skills. Alex forced a smile that hurt her face, said something about second chances, and extracted herself before they could offer their own charity, or worse, their prayers. Sienna had been drinking champagne steadily since arriving, her voice getting louder with each glass as she held court near the ice sculpture. Alex watched her tell a story about Tyler, something involving a yacht in Miami and a proposal that never quite happened, her gestures expansive and proprietary. When Sienna's eyes landed on Alex, something sharpened in her expression, that particular cruelty of insecure people who needed someone to punch down at. "Tyler's so sweet, hiring homeless people," Sienna announced to her circle, her voice carrying across the room. "Like, that jacket probably has diseases, but he's touching it anyway because he's just so giving." The models laughed, their faces lit by phone screens as they recorded Sienna's performance for their Instagram stories. Alex felt a familiar tightness in her chest, the hypervigilance that made loud noises sound like gunfire and crowded rooms feel like ambushes waiting to happen. She'd survived firefights in Syria, led her platoon through territory where every shadow might hide an enemy, watched friends die in her arms. And now she was being mocked by people who thought military service was a costume and poverty was a personality flaw. Her hands trembled slightly as she set down the water bottle, the tremors getting worse when she was stressed, and she focused on her breathing like Dr. Chin had taught her. For counts in, for counts hold, for counts out. Tyler glanced over at Sienna's comment, saw Alex standing alone looking shell-shocked, and did absolutely nothing because defending her might cost him social capital he couldn't spare. The evening dragged on with Alex playing her role, the grateful veteran, the living testament to Tyler's goodness, while inside she calculated how much longer she could endure this performance. She'd taken orders she disagreed with before, followed commanders whose decisions got people killed, survived by compartmentalizing survival from dignity. This felt similar but worse because at least in combat, the enemy was obvious. Here, she was being destroyed by kindness that wasn't kind, by charity that felt like contempt, by people who claimed to honor her service while treating her like a mascot they could pose with for social media clout. When Marcy finally dismissed her at midnight, Alex walked to her Civic with a $500 check for security services and a feeling that she'd sold something more valuable than her time. 3 weeks into the arrangement, Alex had established a routine that kept her alive, if not exactly living. She slept in her Civic parked in Tyler's driveway. Marcy had suggested it made him look good to neighbors, a veteran literally guarding his home, and showered at the VA hospital 3 times a week. Tyler paid her $800 every 2 weeks for what amounted to being visible at his events and standing around his property looking military. The salary insulting for someone with her training, but enough to buy food and gas. She'd learned to tune out the casual cruelty, Sienna's comments about her clothes, Marcus's impatience when she didn't smile enough for photos, Tyler's complete indifference to her as anything beyond a prop. The tremors in her hands had gotten worse, her sleep more fragmented, but she took her VA medications and told herself she'd survived worse than rich people's contempt. Jordan arrived on a Saturday morning with a backpack full of comic books and expectations his uncle would barely meet. Alex watched from her car as Tyler's sister Rebecca dropped the boy off. The conversation tense even from a distance as Rebecca pointed at her watch and made Tyler promise to actually spend time with Jordan this weekend. The kid was all energy and hero worship, wearing his Uncle T-Bone jersey and carrying a football he immediately wanted to throw around Tyler's perfectly landscaped yard. Tyler looked at his nephew with something like affection struggling against annoyance, checking his phone even as Jordan tugged his arm asking about practice in the playoffs and whether Tyler thought he could play professional football someday. Alex saw the moment Tyler decided Jordan was an obligation rather than a joy, saw the kid's face fall when Tyler said they'd hang out later. He had some calls to make first. Jordan noticed Alex in the driveway after Tyler disappeared into the house. He approached with the fearless curiosity of 8-year-olds who hadn't yet learned that some adults didn't want to be bothered. "Are you Uncle Tyler's bodyguard?" he asked, eyes wide with the possibility that his uncle was important enough to need protection. Alex found herself smiling despite the exhaustion, the kid's enthusiasm infectious in a way that bypassed her usual defenses. Something like that, she said, and Jordan immediately launched into questions about whether she carried a gun, no, whether she knew karate, yes, actually, and whether she thought his uncle was the best linebacker in NFL history, probably top 5. His innocence felt like something precious and fragile in the manufactured world of Tyler's estate. Tyler's phone rang constantly throughout the day, agents, sponsors, teammates making plans, while Jordan waited for the attention he'd been promised. Alex watched the boy's disappointment accumulate like debt, saw him try and be patient even as the hours slipped away and Tyler remained locked in his home office handling business that felt more important than family. Around 3 p.m., Jordan wandered back to Alex's car, his football tucked under one arm, asking if maybe she wanted to throw with him since Uncle Tyler was busy. Alex hesitated. This wasn't her job. Engaging with Tyler's nephew felt like crossing some professional boundaries she was trying to maintain, but Jordan's hopeful face made the decision for her. They spent the next hour in the yard, Alex teaching him proper throwing mechanics, while he peppered her with questions about whether soldiers got to play football in their free time overseas. Marcus arrived at 5 p.m. with a garment bag and news that made Tyler actually emerge from his office. There was a sponsored dinner tonight. Some energy drink company considering a $2 million endorsement deal, and Tyler needed to be charming and sober and give them absolutely no reason to associate him with the DUI arrest that was finally fading from headlines. Rebecca's running late, Tyler said, checking his phone with visible annoyance. She can't pick Jordan up until 9. Marcus shrugged because children weren't his problem, and Tyler looked at his nephew with the calculation of someone deciding if canceling would cost him more than attending with a kid in tow. Alex watched this transaction happen, saw Jordan's face light up thinking he'd get to go to a fancy dinner with his uncle, saw Tyler decide that an 8-year-old didn't fit the image he needed tonight. "Alex, can you watch him?" Tyler asked, already assuming yes, because who was she to refuse orders from a man paying her rent, even if her rent was a car parked in his driveway? Just keep him entertained until Rebecca gets here. Maybe order pizza or something. He pulled out his wallet, handed her a $100 bill like that compensated for turning her into an unpaid babysitter. Marcus was already ushering Tyler toward a Range Rover, the garment bag draped over his arm, checking his watch because they were late and sponsors didn't like to be kept waiting. Tyler called over his shoulder something about there being food in the kitchen. The alarm code was his jersey number, and Jordan knew not to touch anything expensive. Then they were gone, Jordan and Alex standing in the driveway, watching the Range Rover disappear toward whatever opportunity was more valuable than time with family. Jordan tried to hide his disappointment, his 8-year-old face attempting the kind of stoicism that suggested he'd learned not to expect much from his famous uncle. "It's okay," he said, voice bright with forced cheerfulness. Uncle Tyler's really busy saving the team. Alex felt something crack in her chest. This kid trying to rationalize neglect as importance. Already learning a lesson that some people were worth waiting for even when they never showed up. She looked at the house. Massive, empty, equipped with everything except the one thing Jordan needed, and made a decision that probably exceeded her security guard authority. "Come on," she said, jingling the keys Tyler had given her weeks ago for emergency access. "Let's see what's in that kitchen, and then maybe I'll tell you some actual stories about being brave that don't involve football." The house was obscenely large for 2 people, and a nephew who visited maybe once a month. Alex led Jordan through rooms that felt more like museums than homes. The formal dining room that seated 16, the living room with furniture too white to actually sit on, the game room with a pool table and arcade machine still wrapped in plastic because Tyler had never bothered to unbox them. Jordan's eyes went wide at everything, his fingers hovering near but not touching, trained by previous visits that Uncle Tyler's things were for looking, not using. The kitchen was industrial grade, all stainless steel and marble, stocked with organic kale and protein powder, and basically nothing an 8-year-old would consider food. Alex ordered pizza from a place that promised delivery in 30 minutes, then made the executive decision that the game room's arcade machines could be used if she was the one unwrapping them. The pizza arrived at 6:45, and Alex paid with Tyler's 100, pocketing the change because he'd probably never noticed, and she needed every dollar. Jordan attacked the pepperoni like he hadn't eaten all day, which made Alex wonder if Tyler had even fed the kid lunch before abandoning him for business calls. They ate in the game room, Jordan winning 3 straight rounds of arcade basketball, while Alex spotted the cracks in his enthusiasm. The moments he checked his phone, hoping his uncle would text. The way he talked about Tyler's accomplishments, like he was trying to convince himself they mattered more than presents. Alex told him sanitized versions of Army stories. Medical evacuations that ended happily. Supply convoys that reached their destinations. Keeping the violence and horror out of narrative she made sound like adventurers, because he was 8 and deserved heroes who actually came home safe. Around 8 p.m., they heard a sound from the front of the house. Glass breaking, subtle enough that most people wouldn't have noticed over the arcade games and Jordan's excited chatter. Alex's body responded before her brain processed threat. 6 years of combat training overriding civilian hesitation. She grabbed Jordan's arm, pressing a finger to her lips in a universal gesture for silence, her other hand reaching for phone to call 911. Jordan's eyes went wide with fear and excitement, that childhood confusion about whether danger was scary or cool, while Alex moved to the game room door listening. Another sound. Footsteps, definitely inside the house now, moving toward the back where bedrooms and Tyler's home office contained everything valuable a burglar might want. Alex's hands had stopped shaking, her mind crystal clear in a way it only was during actual emergencies. The PTSD paradoxically helpful when real threats matched her constant hypervigilance. She pulled Jordan into the hallway bathroom, the one Marcy had let her change in weeks ago, locking the door and dialing 911 with practice efficiency. "Intruder at 2847. Ridgeview Drive, Boulder," she whispered, her voice steady despite her heart hammering against her ribs. "Child present. Securing location now." The dispatcher started asking questions, but Alex cut her off. "Just send everyone you have," and hung up because she needed to hear what was happening beyond the bathroom door. Through the crack, she watched a shadow move past, male, approximately 6 feet, carrying something that might be a weapon or a bag for stolen goods. Jordan pressed against her leg, trembling with fear that felt appropriate, unlike her own tremors which came from broken neurological wiring, and Alex made a calculation that would either save them or get them both killed. The intruder was heading toward the master bedroom, his footsteps confident in a way that suggested he'd planned this, maybe watched the house and knew Tyler's schedule. Alex had maybe 3 minutes before police arrived. Boulder response times were good for wealthy neighborhoods where tax dollars actually funded services, but 3 minutes was enough time for an intruder to find them, hurt Jordan, disappear into night with whatever he'd come for. She unlocked the bathroom door as quietly as possible, told Jordan to stay, put in words that carried the tone of a command rather than a request, and moved into the hallway with the muscle memory of 100 tactical situations where hesitation meant death. The intruder emerged from Tyler's bedroom carrying a laptop and some jewelry, turning toward the stairs just as Alex stepped into his path. "Drop it and leave," Alex said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd given orders under fire and expected them to be followed. The intruder froze, clearly not expecting resistance from what should have been an empty house. He was younger than she'd thought, early 20s, dressed all in black like a movie burglar, his eyes wide with adrenaline and probably drugs that made him unpredictable. He didn't drop anything. Instead, he pulled out a knife from his belt, the blade catching the hallway light, his body language shifting from caught in the act to willing to fight. Alex felt the familiar clarity that came with actual danger, her training overlaying civilian surroundings with tactical assessment. Distance to target, potential weapons within reach, exit routes, collateral concerns. Jordan was behind her in the bathroom. Police were minutes out, and this kid with a knife probably thought she was household staff who'd scare easy. "Last chance," Alex said, moving into a stance that looked casual but positioned her weight for maximum mobility. The intruder laughed, nervous, high on something, and said something crude about what he'd do to her before leaving. Alex didn't bother responding with words. She closed the distance in 2 steps, grabbed his knife hand with precision that came from hand-to-hand combat training at Fort Benning, and used his own momentum to flip him face first into the hardwood floor. The knife skittered across the hallway as she secured his arm behind his back, her knee pressed against his spine with enough pressure to immobilize without causing permanent damage. He struggled, trying to throw her off, not understanding that she'd done the same maneuver on insurgents who wanted to kill her a lot more than this suburban burglar wanted to escape. She increased the pressure until he stopped fighting, whimpering about his arm, while she maintained control and waited for backup. The intruder's phone had fallen from his pocket during the struggle. Alex saw the screen light up with a text message. He at dinner? Kid still there. Her combat-trained mind processed implications faster than conscious thought. This wasn't random. Someone knew Tyler was gone, knew Jordan was here, had sent this guy specifically tonight. She increased pressure on the intruder's arm, her voice dropping to the command tone that had once led soldiers through hostile territory. "Who sent you?" she demanded. The kid was crying now, his tough guy performance collapsing under pain and fear, babbling about not knowing names, just being hired to grab the laptop and scare the kid if necessary. Alex heard "grab the kid" in his rambling confession and felt cold rage replace the tactical clarity. This wasn't burglary. This was targeting Jordan. Police sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer, and Alex adjusted her hold to keep the intruder secure while reaching for her own phone to call Tyler. He answered on the third ring, his voice annoyed at the interruption of whatever networking he was doing at the sponsored dinner. "What?" he snapped, clearly not looking at caller ID. Alex's voice was steady despite everything. "Your house was broken into. Your nephew is a target. I have the suspect secured, and you need to get home now." Silence on the other end, long enough that she thought the call had dropped, before Tyler's voice came back stripped of annoyance and full of something that might have been fear. "Is Jordan okay? Did they hurt him?" Alex looked at the bathroom door, where Jordan was still hiding, following orders like a good soldier. "He's fine because I was here. Police are pulling up now. Get home." The Boulder police arrived with 4 cars and enough firepower to suggest they'd taken the child present seriously. 2 officers secured the intruder, while a female officer went to comfort Jordan, who emerged from the bathroom looking shell-shocked but unharmed. A detective arrived 15 minutes later, taking statements and photographs, carefully documenting the knife and the intruder's phone, which Alex had secured as evidence. Through it all, Alex maintained the calm professionalism of someone giving mission debriefs, answering questions with military precision, while her hands started shaking again now that the actual danger had passed. The detective looked at her with something like recognition, that particular attention law enforcement gave when they sent someone with training. "Where do you serve?" he asked, and Alex told him Army. Deployed twice, recently separated from service, as if those words could encompass 6 years of her life. Tyler arrived home 40 minutes later, bursting through the door with Marcus trailing behind, looking concerned and calculating in equal measure. Rebecca appeared 5 minutes after, having driven from Denver breaking every speed limit, when Tyler called her screaming that someone had tried to kidnap her son. The house was controlled chaos. Police finishing their investigation. Jordan wrapped in a blanket on the couch, being checked by paramedics. Alex giving a final statement to the detective who'd been asking increasingly detailed questions about her background. When Rebecca saw Alex, she crossed the room with the singular focus of a mother protecting her child and pulled her into a fierce hug that Alex didn't know how to return. "You saved my baby," Rebecca said, crying to Alex's shoulder while Tyler stood frozen watching this display of gratitude he hadn't earned. The detective's questions had become more specific, his interest shifting from routine burglary to something else entirely. "Ma'am, I'm looking at how you subdued a suspect with a knife without injury to yourself or the child. That's not civilian self-defense. That's military training, probably special operations level." Alex felt a familiar resistance to talking about her service, the instinct to deflect and minimize, but the detective's expression suggested he'd already run her name through databases while interviewing her. "Captain Alexandria Rivera," he read from his phone, his eyebrows rising with each line. "Army Ranger, 75th Ranger Regiment. 2 combat deployments Syria and Afghanistan. Silver Star for valor. 14 confirmed rescue operations saving 47 lives." Tyler's head snapped toward her, his expression shifting from concern to confusion to something that looked like he'd been slapped. Marcus stepped forward, his publicist instincts sensing a narrative that needed controlling before it spread. The intruder was just a random burglar, right? No need to make this into more than it was. The detective looked at Marcus like he'd suggested the sky was plaid. "Sir, this was a targeted home invasion during a specific time window when the homeowner was scheduled to be away. The suspect had detailed information about the house layout and the child's presence. He turned his phone screen toward Tyler, showing text messages that had been recovered. Target at sponsored dinner until 9, nephew alone with house sitter. Grab the laptop from the office and grab the kid if you can. Make it look like ransom. Tyler read the messages, his face going pale as implications crystallized into something personal and terrifying. Someone had sent a stranger to kidnap Jordan, had known his schedule, had planned this with inside information. The detective continued, his voice professional but grave. We'll need to investigate who had access to your schedule, Mr. Matthews. This level of detail suggests someone in your inner circle provided information to whoever hired the suspect. Tyler looked around at the police, at his sister holding Jordan, at Marcus, whose face had gone carefully neutral, at Alex, who stood there in her generic security uniform, having saved his nephew from consequences Tyler hadn't seen coming. Captain Rivera, the detective said, using her rank like it mattered because to him, it clearly did. I'm recommending you receive a civilian commendation for your actions tonight. Your training and quick response likely saved this child's life. Alex wanted to deflect, to say she'd just done what anyone would do, but the trembling in her hands betrayed that she knew exactly how close they'd come to disaster. Rebecca refused to let go of Alex, asking questions about her service that Alex answered in the abbreviated way she'd learned to cope with civilian curiosity. Tyler listened to her mention the Silver Star, the rescue operations, the years commanding Rangers in some of the most dangerous territory in the Middle East, and the expression on his face suggested he was recalculating everything he thought he knew. You're a decorated war hero, he said, the words coming out slow like he was testing a foreign language. And I had you standing around parking lots like a mascot. The shame in his voice was new, genuine, nothing like the practiced humility he performed at charity galas. Marcus was already on his phone, probably calling Marcy to spin the story into something that made Tyler look less like an asshole who'd exploited a veteran and more like a visionary who'd recognized her value all along. The lead detective, whose nameplate read Morrison, asked Alex to walk him through the timeline again, this time with more focus on the suspect's phone and the text suggesting coordination. Do you know anyone who might have wanted to hurt you or your family, Mr. Matthews? Morrison asked. Tyler shook his head, running through possibilities out loud. Fans he'd angered, opponents he'd trash-talked, business deals gone bad, but nothing that would escalate to kidnapping. Marcus had gone quiet, his usual smooth competence replaced by something that looked like poorly hidden panic. Alex watched him check his phone multiple times, saw how his eyes kept darting to the door like he wanted to leave, and felt that tactical awareness kicking again, the sense that something wasn't adding up in his behavior. Jordan finally spoke, his voice small from the couch where he was surrounded by adults. The man said someone named Marcus told him Uncle Tyler wouldn't care if they took me because I'm just a kid and Uncle Tyler has more important things. The room went silent, everyone turning toward Marcus, whose face had drained of color. Tyler's expression shifted from confusion to dawning comprehension to rage, so pure it radiated like heat. What did you just say? Tyler asked Jordan, his voice deadly quiet, moving toward his nephew while keeping his eyes locked on his agent of 6 years. Jordan repeated it, word for word with the precision of traumatized children who remembered everything, and Marcus's carefully constructed world began to collapse in real time. Detective Morrison was already moving toward Marcus, his hand resting on his service weapon while other officers positioned themselves to block exits. Mr. Chun, I'm going to need you to stay right there and answer some questions. Marcus tried to run, actually bolted for the door in a move so desperate it would have been comical if it wasn't proof of guilt. But Alex moved faster. Her combat reflexes allowed her to cut off his exit route and put him face down on Tyler's marble floor for the second time that night. Morrison cuffed him while reading rights, Marcus babbling about lawyers and misunderstandings while Tyler stood there looking like his entire reality had shattered. The lead detective called for backup, informing dispatch they were arresting the suspect accomplice for conspiracy to commit kidnapping, and the night spiraled from home invasion into something much darker. The police station interrogation of Marcus Chin lasted 6 hours and ended with a confession that unraveled Tyler's entire professional life. Marcus had been embezzling from Tyler's endorsement deals for 3 years, skimming payments and inflating expenses until he'd stolen $3.2 million that he'd lost gambling on sports. When Tyler's DUI threatened to tank his endorsement value and Marcus's scheme was about to be discovered during a financial audit, Marcus had panicked and hired someone to kidnap Jordan for ransom. Money he'd demand from Tyler's accounts to cover the embezzlement before anyone noticed. Sienna had been Marcus's girlfriend for 8 months, introduced to Tyler deliberately to keep tabs on his schedule and personal life, feeding Marcus information that would make the kidnapping possible. The whole charity gala, the veteran hiring, Tyler's redemption arc, all of it had been Marcus buying time to steal more money and execute his desperate plan. Detective Morrison called Tyler at 4 a.m. to update him, his voice tired but satisfied that the case was breaking exactly how he'd suspected once Marcus ran. Your ex-girlfriend is in custody, too. Her phone records show she texted the suspect your dinner schedule and confirmed Jordan would be alone. Tyler sat in his kitchen where just hours earlier Alex had ordered pizza for his nephew, his Super Bowl ring sitting on the counter like a monument to success that suddenly felt meaningless. He'd been so focused on image and contracts and staying rich that he'd missed his agent stealing millions and his girlfriend conspiring to kidnap Jordan. The championship, the endorsements, the mansion, all of it built on foundations so unstable that one decorated veteran had seen the cracks he'd ignored. The news broke at sunrise, local stations running with Broncos star's agent arrested in kidnapping plot, and national outlets picking it up by breakfast. Tyler's phone exploded with calls. His lawyer, his teammates, his mother whose "I told you so" was somehow worse than any criticism. But he ignored them all, sitting in his empty house watching Rebecca pack Jordan's things to take him home where she'd keep him safe from uncles who value convenience over vigilance. Jordan hugged Tyler goodbye with less enthusiasm than previous visits, his hero worship damaged by the reality that being famous didn't make someone protective. Tyler watched him drive away, felt the loneliness of his mansion press in, and realized that Alex sleeping in her car in his driveway had been the only thing standing between his family and disaster. The press conference happened at noon, organized by the Broncos PR team, because the story was too big for Tyler to ignore or spin. He sat behind a microphone in team headquarters, surrounded by lawyers and franchise officials, reading a prepared statement about betrayal and gratitude that his lawyer had written. But when a reporter asked about Alex, "Is it true the homeless veteran you hired saved your nephew?" Tyler went off script. "Her name is Captain Alexandria Rivera, Army Ranger, Silver Star recipient, and I treated her like a prop instead of the hero she is," he said, his voice cracking with genuine emotion. "She was sleeping in her car in my driveway because I paid her barely anything to stand around making me look charitable, and she saved my nephew's life using skills she earned protecting this country. I don't deserve her service, but she gave it anyway." The video went viral within hours, clipped and shared across every platform. Tyler's raw honesty cutting to the usual athlete PR speak. Public opinion swung hard, from criticism about exploiting a homeless veteran to grudging respect for his admission of failure. But Alex didn't have social media, didn't see the headlines calling her the veteran who saved the day, was sleeping in her Civic at the VA hospital parking lot when her phone started ringing with media requests. Dr. Chin found her during afternoon group therapy, gently suggesting she might want to check the news, and Alex watched herself become a story without her consent, her military service and homelessness repackaged as inspiration porn for an audience that would forget her name within a week. Tyler showed up at the VA hospital at 4 p.m., driving through security with the kind of confidence that suggested he'd never been denied access anywhere. He found Alex in the courtyard where veterans gather to smoke and avoid therapy, her military jacket pulled tight despite the Colorado heat. She saw him coming and almost left, not ready for whatever apology or offer he prepared to ease his conscience. But Tyler knelt in the grass in front of her, actually knelt, his expensive slacks getting dirty, and said the word she'd needed to hear weeks ago. "I'm sorry for everything, for using you, for dismissing your service, for not seeing you as a person until you saved my family. I was wrong, and I want to make it right." Alex had heard plenty of apologies from commanders who'd made bad calls, politicians who'd sent soldiers to die for unclear objectives, civilians who thanked her for her service while voting against veteran benefits. Tyler's apology felt different because his shame was visible, his privilege stripped away by the realization that wealth couldn't protect him from consequences of his own arrogance. "Your agent stole $3.2 million, Alex said, not making it easy for him. "Your girlfriend tried to help kidnap your nephew, and you never noticed because you were too busy thinking being rich made you smart." Tyler absorbed this, nodding because denying it would have been insulting her intelligence. "I want to hire you properly," he said. "Not as a prop. As head of security for a foundation, I'm creating to hire veteran security teams. 6-figure salary, full benefits, VA partnership, real work using your actual skills." Alex studied him, looking for performance, the angle, the way this would benefit him more than veterans who needed work. But Tyler's eyes were red from crying or not sleeping, his usual swagger completely absent, and she realized it was offer the thing she'd lost after discharge: purpose, structure, the chance to lead again. "I don't want charity," she said, the same line she'd used when Marcus handed her that first pathetic paycheck. "I want respect, appropriate compensation, and autonomy to run the program without interference from people who think veterans are broken toys that need fixing." Tyler stood, extending his hand like they were meeting for the first time, and when Alex shook it, she felt calluses that matched her own, evidence that even rich people occasionally did actual work. The Tyler and Alex Rivera Foundation launched 3 months later in a press conference that felt nothing like the charity gala, where Alex had stood alone being mocked. This time she wore a professional suit that fit, her silver star pinned to her lapel, speaking into microphones about veteran employment, while Tyler stood slightly behind her, letting her lead. The foundation had $5 million in initial funding. Tyler's money, cleaned by lawyers and audited to make sure no trace of Marcus's theft remained, dedicated to training and hiring veteran security teams for corporate clients who needed expertise instead of minimum wage guards. Alex had hired 15 veterans in the first month, mostly Rangers and Marines with combat experience that translated directly to executive protection and threat assessment. They made $75,000 annually with full medical benefits and mandatory counseling, treating PTSD as a service-related injury rather than a character flaw. The public humiliation of Marcus and Sienna unfolded in stages, each reveal more damaging than the last. Marcus's trial exposed years of embezzlement, his gambling addiction, and text messages plotting Jordan's kidnapping with the casual cruelty of someone who saw an 8-year-old as collateral damage. He was sentenced to 15 years federal prison, his name permanently associated with the phrase "trusted agent turned kidnapper" in every news article. Sienna lost her Instagram following overnight when text revealed she called Jordan Tyler's brat and suggested the kidnapping would be easy money. Her influencer career destroyed by evidence of her participation in targeting a child. The trial became national news, court TV covering every session, and Alex had the satisfaction of watching both of them humiliated in front of everyone who'd once treated her like trash. Tyler's transformation wasn't immediate or complete, but it was real in ways that mattered. He sold the Boulder mansion, too many memories of betrayal and almost tragedy, and bought a smaller home in Denver proper where Jordan could visit without feeling like he was entering a museum. He restructured his endorsements, turning down the energy drink deal when he learned they underpaid their warehouse workers, focusing instead on companies that supported veteran employment and fair labor practices. His teammates noticed a change. The way he showed up earlier and stayed later, listened more, and performed less, became the kind of leader people followed because they trusted him rather than because he was talented. The DUI became a footnote rather than his defining story, replaced by headlines about the foundation and his advocacy for veteran mental health services. Alex moved out her Civic and into an apartment the foundation rented for her, 1-bedroom, modest, with a parking spot where a car could sit without her sleeping in it. The first night in an actual bed felt wrong, too soft, too safe, and she'd ended up on the floor with her sleeping bag until her therapist convinced her to try graduate exposure to comfort. Dr. Chin watched Alex's progress with professional satisfaction, noting how employment with clear structure and purpose reduced her PTSD symptoms faster than any medication. The foundation became Alex's new platoon, the veteran she hired her soldiers, the work giving her the sense of mission she'd lost after discharge. She still had bad days, triggers that made her hypervigilant, Nightmares that left her shaking. But now she had resources and support instead of a car backseat. Tyler started showing up at Alex's office unannounced, supposedly to check on foundation business, but really to talk about things he'd never discussed with anyone. His fear that without football he was nothing, his recognition that wealth had isolated him from actual human connection, his guilt about Jordan almost paying for Tyler's negligence with his safety or his life. Alex listened because that's what leaders did, and somewhere in those conversations, her contempt for Tyler softened into something more complicated. She saw him wrestling with privilege he'd never examined, try and become someone worthy of the second chance she'd given him by stopping that intruder. When he asked her to dinner, an actual date, not a business meeting, she said yes because loneliness was exhausting, and Tyler had at least proven he could learn from his mistakes. Their first date was at a diner in downtown Denver, where nobody cared about Super Bowl rings or silver stars. They sat in a booth that had probably served a million conversations, eating burgers that cost $12 and tasted better than anything from Tyler's charity gala. He asked her about Syria, not the sanitized version she told at foundation events, but the real story of the ambush that killed her platoon and left her the only survivor. Alex found herself talking about things Dr. Chun had spent months trying to get her to process. The guilt of living when better soldiers died, the way her training had saved her while friends bled out, the impossibility of explaining to civilians why she couldn't just get over it. Tyler listened without trying to fix her, without offering platitudes about time healing wounds, just absorbing her truth with the humility of someone who'd finally learned that being rich didn't make him wise. Rebecca approved of the relationship with the fierce protectiveness of a sister who'd watched her brother waste years on people like Sienna. She brought Jordan to one of the Foundation's veteran hiring events, let him meet the Rangers and Marines who worked for Alex, showed him what real heroes looked like when they weren't performing for cameras. Jordan attached himself to Alex with a devotion he'd once reserved for Tyler, asking questions about military training and whether she thought he could be a Ranger someday. Alex told him the truth, that it was hard, that people died, that service meant sacrifice, but also that choose and protect others was the most meaningful work a person could do. Tyler watched his nephew glow under Alex's attention and realized that love looked like showing up consistently, not occasionally with expensive presents. The wedding happened 6 months after the Foundation launch, small and deliberate at Arlington National Cemetery, where Alex wanted to honor the friends who couldn't be there. Tyler wore his dress uniform. He'd never served, but Alex's Ranger platoon survivors had made him an honorary member in recognition of the Foundation's work, while Alex wore her Army blues with her silver star visible. Rebecca stood as maid of honor. Jordan carried rings, and 50 veterans filled the chapel because Alex had built something bigger than a job. She created a community of people who understood service and sacrifice. Tyler's vows included promises about showing up, being present, earning her trust daily because he knew marriage to someone like Alex meant being worthy of the woman who'd save his nephew, and, in doing so, save him from a life of empty achievement. The Foundation grew to employ 200 veterans within 2 years, with corporate clients paying premium rates for security teams that combined military precision with genuine care about protecting people rather than just collecting paychecks. Alex became a national advocate for veteran employment, testified before Congress about PTSD treatment and the failure of transition programs that treated soldiers like liabilities instead of assets. Tyler used his platform to amplify her work, every interview redirecting attention from football to the Foundation, every endorsement deal negotiated to include veteran hiring requirements of the company. They became partners in the truest sense. Two people who both been underestimated, both learned humility through crisis, both discovered that wealth and fame meant nothing without purpose. Alex discovered she was pregnant during a routine checkup at the VA. The news delivered by Dr. Chun, who became her friend as much as her psychiatrist. She told Tyler in their kitchen, watching his face cycle through shock and joy and terror in the span of seconds. "I don't know how to be a father," he admitted. The vulnerability still uncomfortable for a man who'd spent his life projecting confidence. Alex took his hand, placed it on her still flat stomach, and said the truest thing she knew. "Neither of us knows what we're doing, but we'll figure out together." They announced the pregnancy at a Foundation fundraiser, Rebecca crying with joy, Jordan declaring he'd be the best cousin in history, The room full of veterans who'd fought beside Alex, offering protection to this baby, who'd be born into a family built on second chances. The baby arrived 3 months after Tyler's final season with the Broncos, his retirement announcement surprising no one who'd watched him shift his focus from football to family. They named her Maya Alexandria Matthews, after no one in particular, but everyone who mattered, a name that carried strength and possibility, without the weight of legacy. Tyler held his daughter in the hospital room. Jordan pressed against his side, asking if the baby knew who he was yet. Alex exhausted and happy in ways she'd never imagined during those months sleeping in her Civic. Rebecca took photos that would fill frames in their home, capturing the moment Tyler stopped being a football player and became a father, the moment Alex stopped being just a veteran and became someone who'd built a life beyond survival. The Tyler and Alex Rivera Foundation celebrated its 5th anniversary with a gala that looked nothing like the first charity event where Alex had been a prop. This time, 300 veterans filled the ballroom. Employees, clients, supporters, alongside corporate donors who'd learned that investing in veteran security teams wasn't charity, but smart business. Alex gave a keynote speech with Tyler holding Maya in the audience, Jordan sitting between them in a suit he'd picked out himself. She talked about second chances, about the power of seeing people's potential instead of their current circumstances, about the fact that America's greatest resource wasn't oil or technology, but the men and women who'd chosen to serve something larger than themselves. When she finished, the room stood for a full minute of applause, and Tyler watched his wife, Army Ranger, Silver Star recipient, CEO, mother, claim the recognition she'd always deserved but had almost never received. The end. They'd started as a rich man mocking a homeless veteran. They became partners building something that mattered more than touchdowns or headlines. Maya would grow up surrounded by uncles and aunts who'd served in combat, learning that heroes didn't always get parades, but they always showed up when it counted. Tyler never forgot the night Alex saved Jordan. Wearing it like a debt he'd spent his life repaying not with money, but with showing up daily for people who loved him. And Alex learned that home wasn't a house or even a car. It was a community she built, the veterans she employed, and the family she created with a man who'd finally learned that being rich meant nothing if you couldn't see the wealth in front of you all along.